Week 2, Lesson 1, Hogan's Alley, or The Yellow Kid. We went from cave paintings up to what is probably Europe's first known sequential cartoon. Now, it's nearing the turn of the century. Printing technology is getting much better and more affordable. And newspapers are starting to compete for people's attention. And what better way to do that than with color? Richard Fenton Outcault was a cartoonist who is considered to be the inventor of the modern comic strip. He was hired by the American inventor Thomas Edison as a technical illustrator. He moved to New York, where he worked for Electrical World, a magazine owned by one of Edison's friends. After gaining experience there, he moved to New York World, where he created a single-panel color comic, Hogan's Alley. This was a hugely influential cartoon, which some consider the first comic strip. Thanks to the internet and more people looking at comics, that accomplishment is now up for debate. Did Rudolf Topfer beat him to it, even though his comics didn't have word balloons? Probably, but Hogan's Alley was still hugely influential, and it's a pioneer of what is to become the Sunday comic format. Let's look at the first comic of Hogan's Alley. We see a full page, and there's a large detailed picture in it. There are extra detailed buildings in the background, and the first thing our eyes should focus on is the white circle in the middle. A kid has failed to jump through it, or is in the middle of jumping through it and about to land on a goat. As our eyes look around, we see that these are some pretty poor kids with no money, using everyday objects to perform in their circus. In the top right black space, we see the words, "At the circus in Hogan's Alley, the clowns, ladies and gents, please note at the marvelous grace with which Herr Svengeli sweeps through the paper discs. Please, keep your seats, for next comes Madame Sans Janes, the champion of dogback rider of the world." So, we can tell this kid isn't speaking proper English, probably a Boston accent, and just wants to put on a show. Each of the background characters is drawn in a unique way, and everyone is doing something. Let's look at another picture. This one is the great social event of the year in Shantytown, in which we see the poor kids putting on a mock wedding. But the important thing for this chorus is that we see the first word balloon in a colored comic. The parrot behind the fake priest is saying, "This knocks a ghoul wedding silly." I'm sure the ghoul wedding is a reference that just got lost over the ages. I did some research and couldn't find anything on it. Granted, I didn't have the resources to do a full-length investigation into this, but it's a reference that probably is lost on everyone who is living today. In the crowd, we have a kid yelling, "Photographs for sale," a sentence that most people today should still understand. Now, I want to clarify. This is not the first word balloon ever used, but it's the first one used on a colored drawing that was printed in a newspaper, which meant it was going to be read by thousands of people. Now, we have a picture of the kids doing a boat race. There are no word balloons or speech balloons, as they're often called. There is a text written again on the bottom. But notice, in the bottom left corner, there's a bald Asian-looking kid taking a nap. So far, this kid has been in every Hogan's Alley comic, but hasn't done anything. Now, before anyone writes that the yellow kid is an Asian stereotype, the character is actually supposed to be Caucasian, probably Irish-American. His name is Mickey Dungan, and there's a reason he's bald. It's because his hair was shaved to prevent fleas. Check out this next picture. There he is again, just sitting there, but he's got on a yellow shirt. He has nothing to do with the joke being told there, he's just sitting there, sort of like the author's second signature. I'm going to read the joke here, as it's a pretty solid joke. The suit-covered boy, Chimney McManus, Chimney Man, is talking to another character, Elizabeth Clinchy. Chimney says, "Say, Liz, is your brother Patsy dead?" Liz responds, "Sure he is, and he died a horrible death too. That poor kid couldn't eat nothing for 2 days before he croaked. And he had to die hungry right here within a stone's throw of Thanksgiving. The joke, for those of you who didn't get it, is that her brother is dead. But he was unable to eat in his condition, so he starved to death, which sucked because it was almost Thanksgiving, and if he'd lived to see that, there would have been plenty of food that he wouldn't be able to eat. So, in the next page, we see a big evolution for the character. He's not talking, but his shirt is. It's sort of hard to make out what it says in this picture, but in the bottom left corner, it says, "Me new sweater. This ain't the most first guy who tried interference with me. He can't get me by the hair, 'cause it's cut too shy." Even the ball explains, "Have a ball with me." Other people are using word balloons to speak, but the yellow kid has his yellow shirt to do the talking for him. This technique would prove so popular that the yellow kid became the star of the comic. Here's a comic starring the yellow kid and Liz, the girl whose brother died. Unlike the other comics with the yellow kid, this one is a piece of sequential art, having a clear chronological order, which the comic numbers for you, since at the time of its release, a lot of people didn't know how to read comics, and this shows a proper reading order. There are also no physical barriers between panels, they just fade out. This is something that would change as the medium grew. The title on top is Mad Dog. Of course the dog isn't mad, but cats are awfully. This is a play on words, with the mad dog being a rabid dog, but it could also mean that he's just an angry dog. The sign in each panel says, "Beware of everything, especially the dog." Yellow shirt says what yellow kid is thinking. "Here comes Liz, I'll just hide. She'll be surprised to find me standing here." "Liz, someone has took unfair advantage of me." "Oh Liz, I'm behind on my rent, or vice versa." "Holy gee!" "My dear Liz, you'll have to excuse me till I go home and change my clothes." Now, if you didn't get the implications, pause the video and let it sink in what the yellow boy thinks is happening to his rear end. Thankfully, it turned out it was just a dog that was assaulting him, and the dog didn't know any better, making the whole situation rather innocent. On the bottom, the punchline is, the yellow kid loses some of his yellow. The entire series reads like a crueler version of Charlie Brown in the Peanuts gang. But what really cements the yellow kid in culture is that he's one of the first copyright characters to get merchandising. He was used to promote gum, cigarettes, gin, pins, and a variety of other materials. The other important legacy of the series was that it helped usher in the term yellow journalism. The Yellow Kid became associated with the paper New York Journal, owned by the legendary businessman William Randolph Hearst. His critics claimed that his work was sensationalist and not well researched, and that he used bright Yellow Kid images to encourage people to pick up his paper. This was called Yellow Kid journalism, which later got shortened to yellow journalism. The success on Hogan's Alley and the Yellow Kid paved way for newspaper comics that would follow.